Hello, I'm Julia Goodwin. Welcome to House Beautiful Out Loud. And with me today, I've got two very special guests. Firstly, Sarah Brown, wife of our former Premier and President of Their World. And with Sarah, for a very special premiere, is her mum, Pauline Macaulay, who is a social anthropologist and former head teacher. So today we're going to talk a lot about Sarah's charity work, what home means to Sarah and her childhood home, and her mum's quilting and charity work, as well as her passionate interest in education, which has certainly been passed on to her daughter. So, welcome to both of you.
Thanks, Julia.
Sarah, can you tell me a little bit about, you've always been involved in charity work, Their World, and the focus is very much on girls and education. I think the statistic is 58 million children worldwide are not in school, and 32 or 3 million of them are girls. So why girls, why education, why now?
Thanks, Julia. You're right, it's 58 million children around the world don't get a single day at school, and millions more are at school, maybe not learning, or particularly for girls, leaving school early, facing barriers like early marriage, going into work, being carers for younger children. And that's just not fair, and it's not right. And I think that there is something that we can do about it. So why now is because there is actions that we can take that will make a difference. I set up Their World 12 years ago as a charity in the UK, but our work has grown so much, looking after the rights of women and children, access to proper healthcare and access to education. We started in the UK, but our work has really grown globally. So we're behind a really big push, a big campaign, the Up for School campaign, where we want to bring so many voices of people who care about those children who don't have that opportunity and present them. Right now, it's because we have a year counting down to a promise that was made at the United Nations to get every single child into school. So we have this year to do it.
And that was the promise made, I think, that by 2016 everybody would be in school. But I do gather that the situation is actually sliding a little bit backwards, and the situation, particularly for girls, is getting a bit worse, which is maybe one of the reasons why your charity has never been more timely.
When the promises were first made for the millennium, they're called the Millennium Development Goals, and education is right at the heart of it. The promise was made that every child would get to go to school. And at the beginning, huge progress was made. But we've seen that stall in recent years. And where I think we're seeing it stall is where education is really under attack. You know, we've seen girls who've been shot in Pakistan and school buses blown up. We've seen girls abducted in Nigeria. We're hearing of it through, war with the Syrian refugees pouring out of the country. One year they're in school, the next year they're living in a camp, desperately trying to find a way to restore some sort of normalcy to their lives. So that's where I think we're going backwards, is I think we're seeing children under attack in a way that we've never quite seen before, and in a way where, with the access we have to knowing it's happening with our 24/7 media cycles, we ought to be feeling the outrage and feeling that we need to take action.
You've received lots of accolades. I think you've received an honorary fellowship from the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, and also a Global Health Vision and Impact Award, because whilst we're talking now about girls and education, your charity work really came to light publicly with your work on maternal health, and particularly in developing countries. And was it that you think that drove you on to see that actually a better outcome for mum and baby starts with education?
I'm noticing that people far younger than I, young adults are very motivated to demand a change in the world, and so we're seeing a growing movement from young people who are asking for that change. So my work is to make sure that I can use the skills that I have and the foundation of the charity of Their World, where we've got a fantastic team, we've got a great resource, we've invested in 500 global youth ambassadors to be able to go out and support their campaigning work all over the globe.
And also you've been very ambassadorial in the way you've used social media, Bring Back Our Girls hashtag and Up for School, and I imagine that has helped grow awareness amongst people who might not normally be involved within charity work?
Yeah, social media gives a great opportunity. I've been a big fan of it, and I first started using it properly during the time at 10 Downing Street, where I wanted to be able to use my own voice. And you realise that using something like Twitter, you can put out information about what you're doing. And that was the moment that I really worked with the maternal mortality campaign. That was the moment where it came onto the political agenda. It was something that I could use the position that I had to be able to mobilise with. And you use all the means at your disposal. So I used everything from the access I had to talking to world leaders at that time to social media, where you can communicate with anybody who wants to take an interest.
Well, you were pretty well connected, and as you say, why not use those connections and continue to? As part of your charity work for Their World, I mean, you will have heard and been involved with many tragic and moving stories. Is there any particular story that really made you stop and think, I have to do something about this, or any particular achievement that you would like to share with listeners to kind of inspire them to get involved?
When I was involved with the maternal mortality campaign, I came to that because I'd gone on a visit back to Tanzania, where I had gone to school myself as a child. There was a time when our family lived there, and I was at my very early primary school years were there, and I'd gone back to visit there. I went to visit a hospital and was being taken around a maternal health centre, and there was a room with 8 little cots in it with 8 little newborns, and that's where somebody explained to me that those little newborns didn't have a mum. That all in one day at that hospital they'd lost their mums, and that was the beginning of me going back and finding out what I could do. And as I asked questions, I found out that there wasn't a lot happening, although the solutions were quite simple, and there were many activists and campaigners and health professionals who were ready to move. It just needed to unlock the political will. And so scrolling forward to now, having been part of that campaign, I mean, I should add as a note of hope that through that time, the number of maternal deaths in the world, which was around the 500,000 a year mark, has dropped by nearly half, has dropped by 47%, and we hope to see a further drop there.
Congratulations.
So, well, it's not me, it's many people around the world, but each of us play our part in it. And so again, looking now at what the greatest barriers are for girls, there's a young woman called Ashwini in India who we brought across the United Nations to speak because Ashwini has no sight, which means that for her in India, she'd be at the bottom of the social pile. And yet she's been sponsored and supported through an education, is now an ambassador for Leonard Cheshire charity. She's also running big social centres over there and identifying how other children with disabilities can help find employment and gain skills. And she's also become one of our global youth ambassadors. So, there she is standing in a room addressing an audience that includes the Secretary General of the United Nations. Wow. So it's young women like that. And if I think of, Malala and her friends, Shazia and Kainat, when they were attacked on that bus that day by a gunman, that, the trajectory has been so extraordinary for Malala and her 2 friends who were also injured. They're all determined to continue their studies, determined to keep campaigning. So again, all 3 of them are supportive and on board with the Up for School campaign.
So clearly the charity has made the most enormous difference to them, but I imagine what you both want to see is that, instead of them becoming the exception, they should be the rule. Now, if I take you back a little bit to your maternal health work, and you were patron of the White Ribbon Alliance.
Yeah.
And I believe one of the reasons why maternal health statistics improved was because you got an agreement with countries, including Sierra Leone, Liberia and Guinea, to stop charging for pregnant women for health care. So is that the sort of initiative that you are going to push forward on still?
Here's for education. Here's the reason to be worried, but also the reason to be optimistic. The worry is there are so many children who are out of school who have no opportunity, and also these barriers where children are under attack and faced by the threat of terrorism and the impact of poverty. The reason to be optimistic is nothing needs to be invented to send a child to school. We know how to educate a child. We can train a teacher. We can build a school. We can share education materials. The cost for educating a child in sub-Saharan Africa is somewhere around, basic education, somewhere around £100 a year. Wow. So if you scale that up by 58 million, that's an awful lot of money. But it's the sort of sums that governments, working in partnership with NGOs and non-profits, working in partnership with the private sector, can make a change. It's also in the interests of everybody to do this, to have young people growing up who are educated, who have skills, who can contribute to their communities, contribute to the economic well-being of their whole country. That's what each country wants. So whether you're Nigeria or Pakistan or Sierra Leone or, you want your population to be educated, and the future really lies with girls. For girls to have that opportunity to actually contribute economically to their households, not to be married off age 13, 14, yes. Not to be just sent out to work until they're, or not to, have babies as teenagers, to start to have choices, but also to be able to contribute back. So our voices can make that difference.
Pauline, if I can just turn to you, we haven't chatted much yet. I'm talking quite a lot with Sarah about education for girls at the beginning of their life,
yes.
And the difference it could make. Your own life, to some extent, is an example of a lifelong education that you, I believe, trained as a teacher and then became a head teacher in 2 inner city schools.
That's
then
right.
Did your master's in education later, and then a PhD. Is that the kind of role model that you could see all women aspiring to? Can you tell us a little bit about why you feel lifelong education is so important and how we can pass that message on?
I think that learning is one of the most exciting things, and certainly that was something I wanted to impart to children, in Haringey and Islington and, in the schools that I was head of. That learning is something that you can do all your life. And it's something that I want to be going on doing. Every day I'm learning from Shazia and Kainat. I've been listening to them sharing their experiences, their thoughts, their aspirations.
Can we just explain that they're 2 visitors that you've got staying with you at the moment, 2 young girls that you've got staying with you?
Shazia and Kainat are staying here. It's their half term. And they're, we asked them to come and stay, because I had met Shazia when she just arrived in UK a year and a half ago. So we've been sitting down together, we've been making patchwork cushions for them to take back to school. But while we've been sewing, we've been sharing our experiences about my childhood, their lives at home. We've been Skyping. It was wonderful. We've been Skyping with her father, her brother in Malaysia. It's just been this wonderful kind of sharing of. They're teaching me how to do the stuff on Skype and all that stuff. So I'm teaching them stuff. And it's this wonderful kind of exchange.
Connections, because you're teaching them quilting.
Lifelong learning.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, which is quite an interesting tangent. I mean, if you don't mind me saying that, off mainstream education, that you've obviously become, you're running an international project, a charity project on quilting, I think, which is funded by the National Lottery.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you got into quilting, why it's so important?
I got into quilting in the 1980s, just going to an evening class as an evening off for me. I was a head teacher at the time. It was a 27-hour-a-day job, had a family of 5 teenagers, need say no more, and sometimes Patrick is away on working for a couple of weeks at a time. And it started me off on this wonderful, very hard to explain, just something that I've enjoyed. I've enjoyed the companionship of people all over the world. You can travel the world with people who are quilting. And there's been a rise in interest in quilts and quilt making.
Yeah.
So they've moved from being on the beds to being on the walls, as you can see behind you.
Wonderful rich colours of the oranges and golds.
And I've been interested in the social history of it as well. And what I wanted to do was that there were people making quilts now, and to save this, also using the new technologies, saving their stories of why they quilt, what it means to them, how they go about their stuff. So we managed to get a really wonderful grant from Heritage Lottery Fund, £89,100.
Wow!
For a 3-year project.
Fantastic.
And we're conducting interviews with quilters in 8 different regions in the UK. So we've been in Yorkshire and Teesside. We're now just finishing off in South Wales. We're going to be in London, and then we're going up to Scotland. And then, we'll be in different parts. And these will be archived. So master students can go and listen to them. We're going to have them on our little website, and people can listen to So
I think the project's called Their Stories, am I right?
it's called Talking Quilts, Saving Quilter Stories.
Right, so if people want to Google it, they can find out more.
Yes.
And are there other ways they can get involved if people want to join and do quilting themselves?
Yes.
How should they find out more
How
information?
do you mean to get involved in quilt?
Yes.
There are little groups, big groups all around the countryside. Just find out. And you can get onto the Quilters Guild of the British Isles website.
Right.
Or just get onto Talking Quilts. It'll come up and you'll find out,
Super.
where your little groups are.
Thank you.
They're the most welcoming social groups.
Good. So can we move on and perhaps bring the interview to a close now and just talk a little bit about Mother's Day, which is coming up soon. Obviously, you are a mum of 5 and are now a proud grandma. Or are you grandma or granny or nanny? All of those.
The G-mum, they call her.
I say that's what
G-mum.
my children call my mum.
Only because I was too idle to write out grandma or anything else.
Right, but
So I did a G apostrophe ma and it kind of stuck. So
The G-ma. So on Mother's Day, do you have plans? Will you get together? How do you each spend Mother's Day?
I think every day is Mother's Day. Actually.
She really does.
I really do. And the Father's Day is the same, but
We're not very good at doing a sort of an official Mother's Day. But I'll tell you the other thing is it always falls near International Women's Day.
Yes.
So inevitably there's always something afoot. Fly the feminist flag.
Yes. So it's sort of not chocolates and flowers and big meals out, but it's just Happy Mother's Day.
No,
really.
My boys will either do a Skype or do a little video email or something.
lovely.
Yes.
G-ma and Pops.
And it may sound kind of a bit sort of saccharine, but I kind of do remember the mothers around the world. I'm feel quite strongly for my sisters around the world.
Yes.
And it's very easy to be comfortable in our own situations.
Yes.
You know there's food, you know you've got warmth, you know you can go to the GP and all that stuff. And for many women, that's not the case.
No.
And I do privately have that kind of moment. I do light a candle.
She thinks I don't get it from her.
She thinks she. But to end on a totally very lightweight note, after that, Sarah, do you get breakfast in bed on Mother's Day?
Oh, I hope so.
So is that poached or scrambled?
Just like a bit of toast and a cup of tea and I'm good, yeah.
That's lovely.
And everybody piling into bed at the same time, probably.
That's one of the best moments, actually,
Yes.
isn't it, as a mum? Well, thank you both very much. Thank you, Sarah Brown, President of Their World, and Pauline Macaulay, social anthropologist and former head teacher, for an interesting chat that's covered maternal health, education, and most importantly, Mother's Day. This is Julia Goodwin from House Beautiful Out Loud, signing off. Thank you for listening.